Imagine a scorching afternoon in the Muzaffarnagar district of Uttar Pradesh. A young officer sits in his car, unaware that the next few seconds will redefine the meaning of survival. His only crime? He chose to do what most are too afraid to attempt. He chose to stand by the truth. Suddenly, the silence is shattered by the deafening sound of gunfire. Not one, not two, but 7 bullets are pumped into his body. They tear through his face, his neck, and his chest. Drenched in blood, the officer collapses. This isn't a scene from a gritty Bollywood thriller. This is the real-life story of Rinku Singh Rahi, a man who stared death in the face so intensely that death itself had to blink. But long before the violence and the shadows of corruption, Rinku's life began in a very humble, ordinary home. Born in a small village in Aligarh, Rinku witnessed the harsh realities of poverty from the moment he could understand the world. His father ran a small flour mill, an atta chakki. Money was so tight that there were days when the family didn't know if they would have a meal the next morning. But they say that when the stomach is empty, the heart finds the courage to dream even bigger. Rinku didn't have expensive clothes or toys, but his eyes held a relentless spark, a burning desire to change his family's destiny. Rinku was always brilliant in his studies, but his path was littered with obstacles. There were times when there was no money for school fees, so he would study from old borrowed books or notes from friends. His father always told him, "Son, we have nothing to lose but the entire world to gain." Carrying that philosophy, Rinku poured his soul into his education. His hard work eventually paid off when he cracked the prestigious Provincial Civil Services (PCS) exam. When the results were announced, the entire neighborhood celebrated. The son of a humble mill worker was now a high-ranking officer. Everyone thought the struggle was over, that life would finally be peaceful. But they had no idea that this was just the beginning of a massive storm. His first posting was in the Social Welfare Department. Rinku entered the office with the hope of helping the poor and ensuring government schemes reached the needy. But as he started opening the files, he was horrified. Millions of rupees meant for the scholarships of underprivileged children were simply vanishing. A massive web of corruption had been woven by powerful politicians and bureaucrats. Rinku stood at a crossroads. He could either shut his eyes and enjoy a comfortable, complicit life, or he could challenge the system. Rinku chose his conscience. He started asking questions, he started exposing the scams, and that was the exact moment his death warrant was signed. It was a morning in 2009 when the assassins came for him, changing his world forever. The transition from a quiet village to the corridors of power was supposed to be Rinku's victory lap, but the reality of the Social Welfare Department felt more like a battlefield. As a young district social welfare officer, Rinku didn't just see numbers on a spreadsheet, he saw the faces of the children those numbers represented. Every missing rupee was a meal taken from a hungry child, a book stolen from a student, a dream extinguished before it could even flicker. He discovered a staggering 83 crore rupee scam, a systematic draining of public funds that had been happening for years. Rinku wasn't a man who could be easily intimidated or bought. While others in his position were often treated to lavish dinners or offered gifts to look the other way, Rinku remained a ghost in the machine of corruption. He started filing reports documenting the discrepancies and refusing to sign off on fraudulent documents. He was warned multiple times by people who held significant power. They told him he was young, that he had a bright future, and that it would be a shame to throw it all away for a cause no one else cared about. But for Rinku, the cause was everything. The atmosphere in the office turned cold. His colleagues stopped talking to him. His superiors looked through him as if he were invisible. He was becoming a dangerous anomaly in a system that relied on silence. The pressure mounted daily. Legal threats, administrative hurdles, and subtle hints that his safety was at risk. Yet every time he saw a poor student waiting outside his office, hoping for the scholarship that would keep them in school, his resolve hardened. He realized that if he didn't fight this, no one would. He was the only barrier between the scavengers and the survivors. By early 2009, Rinku had pushed too far. He had successfully halted several illegal payments and was preparing a comprehensive dossier that threatened to bring down high-profile names. The system decided it was time to eliminate the problem. They didn't try to bribe him anymore, they moved straight to the final solution. On that fateful morning, Rinku wasn't just an officer going to work, he was a marked man. As he stepped into the light of that Muzaffarnagar day, the shadow of a hit squad was already closing in. The confrontation between a man's integrity and a system's greed was about to turn bloody. The morning of the attack didn't feel like a day of destiny. It felt like a Tuesday. Rinku was getting ready for a local cricket match, a rare moment of relaxation in a life increasingly dominated by tension. He was dressed in a simple white shirt, a symbol of the purity he tried to maintain in a dirty world. As he sat in his car, the engine idling, the air was suddenly pierced by the screech of tires. Two motorcycles swerved in front of him, blocking his path. Before he could even process the threat, the gunman opened fire. The first bullet shattered the window, sending shards of glass flying like diamonds through the air. Then came the second, the third, and the fourth. The gunmen weren't just trying to scare him. They were there to erase him. One bullet tore into his jaw, another through his neck, and several more into his chest. The force of the impact threw his body back against the seat. Pain, white-hot and blinding, consumed him. Everything went into slow motion. The smell of gunpowder, the sound of his own heavy breathing, and the sight of his white shirt turning a deep, visceral crimson. The attackers fled, leaving behind what they assumed was a corpse. Rinku lay there, his vision blurring, his life force leaking onto the upholstery. Most people would have surrendered to the darkness at that moment. But as Rinku felt his consciousness slipping away, a defiant thought flickered in his mind. Not like this. He refused to be just another statistic, another honest officer forgotten in a file. With an almost superhuman effort, he didn't close his eyes. He fought for every ragged breath, his heart stubbornly refusing to stop beating despite the holes torn through it. Passers-by eventually found him, a sight so gruesome that many turned away in horror. He was rushed to the hospital, his condition critical beyond words. Doctors looked at the young man and saw a miracle that hadn't happened yet. He had lost an eye. His jaw was shattered into fragments and his internal organs were failing. The news spread like wildfire. An officer had been shot for exposing corruption. As Rinku was wheeled into emergency surgery, the battle for his life moved from the streets to the operating table. The world watched, wondering if the man who stood up for the truth would pay for it with his final breath. The operating room was a hive of frantic activity. Surgeons worked for hours, their hands stained with the blood of a man who had become a symbol of a broken system. Rinku's face was a jigsaw puzzle of bone and tissue. One eye was completely destroyed and his hearing was severely impaired. The physical damage was catastrophic, but as the anesthesia wore off and Rinku slowly drifted back to consciousness, he realized the damage went even deeper. He was no longer the man he used to be. Every time he looked in the mirror, he saw the scars of his honesty, a face permanently altered by the violence of greed. For months, the hospital became his world. He underwent dozens of reconstructive surgeries. While most victims of such a traumatic event would have sought a quiet life or a transfer to a safer department, Rinku's spirit remained unyielding. Even as he struggled to speak through a wired jaw, his eyes, the one that remained, burned with an even fiercer light. He realized that the gunmen had failed. They had taken his eye, they had taken his hearing, and they had taken his comfort, but they had forgotten to take his soul. The recovery was grueling. There were nights of immense pain and days of deep frustration. He had to relearn how to eat, how to speak, and how to live in a body that felt like a battlefield. But during this time, something shifted in the public consciousness. People began to rally around him. He wasn't just Rinku Singh Rahi anymore. He was the bulletproof officer. His story became a rallying cry for activists and honest bureaucrats across the country. The attempt to silence him had backfired spectacularly. It had given him a megaphone that reached the entire nation. However, the system he had challenged wasn't finished with him. Despite his near-death experience, the administrative harassment didn't stop. While he was still recovering in the hospital, he faced hurdles regarding his medical leaves and salary. It was a cold, bureaucratic reminder that the snakes he had disturbed were still very much alive in the grass. This was the moment Rinku understood the true nature of his fight. It wasn't just about one scam or one department. It was a war against an entire culture of apathy. And he was just getting started. When Rinku finally walked out of the hospital, he didn't head home to hide. He headed back to the very system that had tried to bury him. But instead of a warm welcome or a hero's reception, he was met with a wall of cold indifference. The government officials who should have protected him were now trying to sideline him. They refused to provide him with the security he needed, and more importantly, they were stalling the investigation into the scholarship scam he had uncovered. It was as if they were waiting for him to simply give up and fade away into the background of disability. But Rinku Singh Rahi was not a man of silence. In 2012, he did something unprecedented for a sitting government official. He sat on a hunger strike at the Jantar Mantar in Delhi. Imagine the scene. A serving PCS officer, his face visibly scarred from bullet wounds, sitting in protest against his own government. He wasn't asking for a promotion or a salary hike. He was demanding a high-level probe into the corruption that almost cost him his life. He was demanding that the people who pulled the trigger and the people who paid them be brought to justice. The strike lasted for days. His health, already fragile from the shooting, began to deteriorate, yet he refused to budge. This move sent shockwaves through the political establishment. It was a PR nightmare for the authorities. How do you explain to the public why a man who took 7 bullets for the state is now starving himself to get that state to do its job? The pressure worked. The government was forced to order a probe, and several arrests were eventually made. But Rinku knew that even this was a temporary victory. He realized that while he could fight individual scams, the real power lay in knowledge and authority. He looked at his life, a life defined by a struggle for education and a fight against a corrupt bureaucracy, and he made a radical decision. He decided he needed to aim higher. He decided to take on the toughest exam in the country while still performing his duties and nursing his wounds. He decided to become a UPSC aspirant. Rinku Singh Rahi's decision to prepare for the UPSC Civil Services examination wasn't born out of a desire for a fancy title or a bigger car. It was a strategic move in a long-term war. He realized that to truly cleanse the system, he needed to be at a level where he could influence policy and command authority that couldn't be easily suppressed by local goons or mid-level bureaucrats. But the challenge ahead of him was almost impossible. Think about his condition at that time. He was functionally blind in one eye. His hearing was severely damaged, making it difficult to follow lectures or engage in group discussions. He suffered from chronic pain, and his jaw still made speaking a struggle. On top of that, he was still a working officer. While most UPSC aspirants spend 12 to 14 hours a day in air-conditioned libraries, Rinku was managing his official duties during the day and fighting legal battles in the evening. He would come home exhausted and in pain, only to open his books and study deep into the night. His preparation was a masterclass in resilience. Because he couldn't see well, reading for long hours was a physical torture. His remaining eye would water and burn, but he would just splash cold water on his face and continue. He used his struggles as fuel. Every time he read about ethics or public administration, he didn't just see theories, he saw the blood on his own shirt. He knew the practical cost of the failures of the Indian administrative system better than any textbook could ever teach. In 2022, the results were announced. Against all odds, the man who had been left for dead in a pool of blood 13 years earlier had done it. Rinku Singh Rahi cleared the UPSC exam. He didn't just pass, he proved that a shattered body could not house a defeated spirit. He became an inspiration not just for aspirants, but for every person who felt that the system was too big to fight. He proved that even if you lose your sight, your vision can remain crystal clear. After clearing the UPSC exam, Rinku Singh Rahi didn't just sit back and enjoy his success. He realized that his journey was a blueprint for others who came from nothing. He became a beacon of hope for thousands of students who were struggling with poverty, physical disabilities, or a lack of guidance. Rinku understood that the system isn't just made of files and buildings, it is made of people. If he could help honest, hardworking youngsters enter the civil services, he could multiply his impact 1,000 times over. He started dedicated coaching and mentorship programs, specifically targeting those from marginalized backgrounds. Rinku didn't just teach them history or geography, he taught them administrative courage. He would often tell his students that a pen in the hand of an honest officer is more powerful than 1,000 guns in the hands of criminals. He became a living example of the idea that while your circumstances might be written by others, your destiny is written by your own hard work. His teaching style was unique. He didn't shy away from his scars, in fact, he wore them like medals of honor. When a student complained about a lack of resources or a small headache, Rinku would simply smile, and they would see the man who studied with one eye and a shattered jaw. The room would go silent. His presence alone was a lecture on perseverance. He was turning his personal tragedy into a collective triumph, ensuring that the next generation of officers wouldn't have to stand alone as he did. But even as a mentor and a celebrated officer, the battle within the department continued. Corruption is a shapeshifter. When it can't kill you, it tries to exhaust you. Rinku was transferred frequently, a common tactic used against troublesome honest officers. Yet every time he arrived at a new office, he started with the same fire. He would audit the books, meet the common people, and ensure that not a single rupee was diverted. He had become a man who could not be broken, and the corrupt started to realize that the 7 bullets hadn't ended him. They had made him indestructible.
As Rinku moved through his career, the scars on his face remained a permanent testimony to his journey. But the world often forgets that physical healing is only half the battle. For Rinku, every day was a reminder of the sacrifice he had made. He lived with 60% disability. His jaw was held together by plates, and his vision was a constant struggle. Yet, the most painful part wasn't the physical trauma, it was the isolation. In a system where going along to get along is the unspoken rule, an honest officer often finds themselves standing in a very lonely corner. The administrative machinery tried to tire him out. He was faced with frequent transfers, sometimes moved to insignificant posts, where the system hoped his voice would be muffled. They wanted him to be a showpiece of honesty, someone they could point to in speeches but keep away from the actual money trails. But Rinku refused to be a trophy. In every department he touched, whether it was social welfare or provincial administration, he brought the same forensic intensity. He began to realize that corruption wasn't just about bad individuals. It was a deep-rooted culture that protected its own. Despite the pressure, Rinku's personal life became a sanctuary of resilience. He didn't let the bitterness of the attack turn him into a cynical man. Instead, he channeled that energy into his family and his students. He often spoke about how the system tries to break your spirit. He had survived the bullets, but now he had to survive the slow, grinding bureaucracy that tries to suffocate integrity with red tape. One of the most profound moments of his later career was when he began to publicly document his journey. He wasn't just an officer anymore. He was a philosopher of justice. He started speaking at forums, telling young aspirants about true power. It is in the ability to say no when everyone else is saying yes to a lie. He was teaching them that the true cost of conscience isn't what you lose, it's what you save, your dignity.
As years passed, Rinku Singh Rahi became a living legend. But the system he tried to fix had a long memory. While he was busy mentoring students and protecting the public exchequer, the administrative machinery was quietly grinding him down. In early 2026, the world witnessed a heartbreaking turn in this saga. Rinku, now an IAS officer, realized that the system doesn't just use bullets to kill honesty. It uses isolation, humiliation, and a special kind of punishment, reserved only for the upright. Despite his 18 years of service and his status as a survivor of a murderous attack, Rinku found himself pushed to the edge. He publicly stated that the government system is designed to reward the corrupt and systematically break the honest. He wasn't just fighting files anymore. He was fighting a psychological war. He felt that instead of being supported for his integrity, he was being treated like an outcast. The very department he bled for was now making him feel like a stranger in his own office. This brings us to a moment that shocked the nation. In March 2026, Rinku Singh Rahi did the unthinkable. He didn't wait for retirement or a comfortable exit. He submitted his resignation from the prestigious Indian Administrative Service. He walked away from the power, the bungalow, and the title that millions dream of. Why? Because he realized that his soul was worth more than a designation. He chose to leave the shackles of the system to maintain his dignity, proving that even a person who survived 7 bullets has a limit to how much injustice they can tolerate from within. Rinku Singh Rahi's resignation isn't a story of defeat. It is the ultimate act of defiance. By walking away from the IAS in 2026, he sent a message louder than any protest. If the system cannot protect the honest will no longer serve the system. His journey, which began in a small flour mill in Aligarh and moved through the blood-stained streets of Muzaffarnagar, has reached a stage where he is no longer bound by government rules. He is now a free voice, a man who has traded his uniform for the ultimate freedom to speak the truth. His legacy today is etched in the hearts of every common citizen who feels cheated by corruption. He has shown us that being successful isn't about holding a high-ranking post. It's about being able to look at yourself in the mirror with pride. Rinku's face, scarred by 7 bullets, is now the face of an independent warrior. He continues to mentor thousands of UPSC aspirants, but now he teaches them something even more profound. that life exists beyond the Lalbati, and that character is the only currency that never devalues. As we look at his life from the 2009 attack to his 2026 resignation, we see a complete arc of a modern-day revolutionary. He proved that you can break a man's bones, you can take his eye, and you can try to stifle his career, but you cannot kill the truth. Rinku Singh Rahi didn't just survive an assassination attempt. He survived the much harder trial of remaining honest in a dishonest world. His story ends not with a "the end," but with a "to be continued." Because Rinku is no longer just an officer. He is a movement. Whether he is in a government office or on the streets teaching students, his presence will always be a reminder that the cost of conscience is high, but the price of silence is even higher. Rinku Singh Rahi, the man who took 7 bullets, conquered the toughest exam, and had the courage to walk away when the system failed him. He is, and will always be, the unbreakable survivor of India.